Hello everyone, you're listening to For Those We Lost. I'm your host Jennifer Sullivan. Thank you for being here. In this very first podcast episode, I want to introduce you to the show. In this podcast, people will share their stories of losing a loved one to COVID. As I've been interviewing people and hearing their stories, I've realized the similarities in our stories, and yet each one is unique to the person, their loss, and how they've moved on. I started this podcast because I lost my mother to COVID last August, and it was the worst experience of my life. My mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2014, and she lived near me. But in October of 2018, my family and I made the difficult decision to move her into memory care because her needs were more than her current assisted living could handle. It was a hard decision, and it was huge, and it was just an overwhelming process. But little did I know that about 15 months later, COVID-19 would hit, and my mom's memory care would be locked, and I would be on the outside. It all happened so quickly, and one thing I noticed right away was that my mom's cognitive abilities, her ability to talk, her walking, and everything started to decline. But I also realized pretty quickly that all my caregiving responsibilities were gone. I could only sit outside the window and talk to her through a screen with my mask on, or on a speakerphone. I immediately became active in the online communities of caregivers who were also on the outside. I wrote to my state governor. I responded to news articles about what was happening. I contacted the Alzheimer's Association, and I called my mom's care home almost every day. I thought that in a few months, people in government, people in positions of power, would have to see that keeping family members apart, especially keeping the vulnerable elderly from their family, was wrong. If I could see it was making my mom worse, then others could see it was too, and I believed that they would have to do something. Locking people away in nursing homes was a quick crisis solution to the virus, but I could see right away that it wasn't a long-term solution, and I truly believed that something would change. But it didn't. I had written to my governor, I had complained to my local DHS office, and I was on the phone almost every day with the memory care home that my mom lived in. I had asked everyone for change, but nothing happened. In the meantime, I continued to sit at my mom's window of her memory care. And I realized that's not something that everyone in my position could do. So I felt lucky. But I will also fully admit that those window visits broke me. They just broke my spirit. My next hope was that my mom and my family could just wait out COVID until the day when everything would be better, and they would open up the doors to her memory care and let me come in, and I would run around the corner and be able to hug her and kiss her and tell her face to face that I loved her. At that point, it didn't even matter if she remembered me. I just wanted to see her and hug her and run my fingers through her hair and cut her nails and do all the things that I used to do. That was pretty much the only hope that kept me going. And then the worst possible thing happened. My mom got COVID in an outbreak in her memory care, and she got sick. She was moved into a COVID-specific nursing home, and she died alone in the middle of the night, and I wasn't there, and I couldn't be with her. After the shock wore off, I was angry, and I reached out to lawyers. I wanted to sue anyone for what had happened to my mom. And after months of struggling through that and learning that in Oregon, where I live, there were laws rushed in to protect nursing homes from liability in the COVID pandemic. And so I had to give up that too. All I really wanted was justice for my mom. But I also felt so alone. I didn't know anyone else who'd lost someone to COVID, and my grief and anger were so deep that even my immediate family didn't understand how I was feeling. So I joined online groups for COVID support, and I found so much help and understanding. I'll be completely candid. I could talk about my mom and what happened to her all the time, and I do mean all the time. I'll talk about COVID to people who don't believe it's real, and I've driven my family pretty much crazy. I had all this anger and frustration. I still have all this anger and frustration, but I didn't know what to do with it. And then this idea formed in my mind that if I couldn't get justice for my mom, maybe I could focus that energy into helping myself and others. And that's when this podcast idea came into being. At first, I reached out to people who lost family members who were in nursing homes, and pretty quickly realized that the stories go much deeper than that. And the more I hear, and the more the world keeps going back to normal, the more I realize that these stories we have to share are needed. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about the anger and the fear and the loss and the helplessness. In this show, people share their stories of losing a loved one to COVID. Each of these stories is heartbreaking, inspiring, and honest. We are candid about how hard it is to move on from our grief, how we relive the events leading up to our loved one's death, and the difficulties in carrying this loss with us through the political turmoil happening in the world right now and in the face of people who don't believe COVID is real. You may hear things in our stories that make you cry, and you may hear things that make you angry. You'll hear people talk about their political beliefs, and you may not agree. You'll also hear people talk about the vaccine, and you may not agree. But I hope you'll keep listening. I hope you'll stay to the end of each episode and realize that each person who openly shares here has experienced deep grief over the loss of a loved one. And that's something we will all experience. We all love someone. We will all lose someone we love. And we will all grieve. These are the stories of those we've lost to COVID. If you've lost a loved one to COVID and would like to share your story on the show, please send me an email. My email address is forthosewelostpodcast@gmail.com, or go to the website forthosewelostpodcast.com and click on the contact button, and you can reach me that way as well. Thanks for listening to this introduction episode. I just wanted to put this out there so that eventually I don't need to remind people about the politics of it all. We're going to talk about politics on this show, and we're going to talk about the vaccine. What this show is not is a conspiracy theory show or anything like that. It's about our stories and our family members, and it's about honoring them. This is a bizarre time to be alive in the world, and even though the big push is to move on, and I'm okay with that, I don't want my mom or anyone else who died of COVID to be forgotten. They deserve better than that. And that's the show, everyone. If you like this show, please share it. Share it with your friends, share it on your social media, and once you've done that, rate and review this podcast on your favorite listening platform. And then go rate it on Apple Podcasts, because that's where most of our new listeners come from. Ratings and reviews are the main way this podcast finds new listeners, so please share the show. Until next time.